Wait for it. Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. They are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, we're going to let our guest, Miss Maria Schneider, introduce herself to our listeners and viewers at home.
Hi, I'm Maria Schneider. I live in New Mexico and I'm a chaos witch. So I write a lot of fantasy witch stories, a lot of dragons, and most of my work is considered cozy.
Okay. I will say, dear listener, when you click the links in the show notes to her Amazon page, her About Me is hilarious. I laughed so hard it's not even funny. And I don't want to read it for you and spoil it, but you really should click the link and just give it a read. I was surprised you got that many words in the bio, though. I thought there was like a limit, but you maxed it.
I think there used to be, and they've gotten a lot more lenient with that. You can also upload a lot of different graphics now on your Amazon book page, which I haven't really looked into, but I got a little carried away with my bio.
I enjoyed it. I haven't messed with mine since I set the account up back in 2015, so maybe I should look into it again.
I think you should put a story in there. I know you have plenty to tell.
So that is sort of my angle in my newsletters. I share funny stories about times I was in the Army. You got to have a shtick, right? And mine is the funny stuff we did. So, all right. So the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we first found Maria. She came recommended to us through Jenna S. Brown. And I think you guys met at Superstars is the conference, right?
Actually, I met... And I know her as Jenna Ray because I found her through her book, Fallen Stone.
Okay.
And I don't remember why I contacted her. It could have been to say, hey, I loved your book. Hey, I found a typo. I don't even remember. And so that's how I met her. And I didn't even know that. I'm not even sure which of her names is her real name. But I know her as Jenna Ray. And then found several other books through her recommendations, and we still chat now and then.
Nice. Jana is her real name. I'm actually co-writing with her, so she would be very happy if you pointed out, hey, this is a typo you missed. I have a book that's out that you read of mine that had been edited 4 different times by 4 different professional editors, and you still found a comma or two that was wrong. It's sometimes, no matter how many eyeballs look at it, stuff just gets missed.
Oh, it does, but it was a very good book. I really enjoyed Go Ship. Highly recommended if you're into science fiction. Great world building. I loved it.
Well, thank you. So before we get started, we do have to do the religion question. So are you ready for this, Maria?
Probably not, but that's okay.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Well, I'm going to have to go with Star Wars because I've never seen Firefly. And very limited Star Trek because I'm not much of a TV watcher.
Did you read any of the books in any of those universes?
Never have read any Star Trek books or Firefly, but I have seen Star Wars.
Okay.
Probably 3 of them.
As a general rule, what would be your favorite sci-fi property then?
Wow. I like space opera when I read. But when I say I don't watch TV, I literally live in a very rural area in New Mexico, and we do not even have a TV hooked up. There is a movie theater here, which I have not been to see a movie in a movie theater since I was probably in my 20s. So I would say that I'd have to pick my sci-fi. I'd say Lindsay Buroker as a writer is probably the one I read the most when it comes to sci-fi.
She's good. I like her stuff
too. She does
the dragons. She's an Army girl made good.
She sure is. And I like, just like with your books, I like the authenticity there. I mean, she really gets the Army humor in there. And like I said, your books have that friendship that I think is very realistic when it comes to military science fiction books.
Yeah, one thing Lindsay's really good at, and probably because she lived it, is she's really good at writing female characters that are strong without trying to make them a man with lady parts. And so she made her females actually believable and still, you know, women, but also badasses. Like she merged the two in a way that was perfect.
She really captures a woman working in a man's world, which I
She
think
does.
I think she gets that from the military background because she has the humor that obviously probably saw her through it in real life. And
Yes.
she has the not condensation, the way men treat women in the
Yeah.
Army, or actually in any job, because I was an engineer, and there's definitely a pecking order, and she picks up on that, and her female characters overcome that every time.
Yes. And she writes fun, like life sucks enough sometimes. You don't really need to chase it in fiction, which is why I'm not a huge grimdark fan. So I like kind of positive, uplifting. I don't need the sunshine and roses as long as there's, you know, light at the end of the tunnel. And that light cannot be the train about to run you over.
Yeah, I don't read grimdark either, and that's probably why I lean very much into the cozy genre, whether I'm reading it or writing it, and whether it's science fiction, fantasy, urban fantasy, doesn't matter. I really do like humor in my writing and definitely in my reading.
All right, we're going to circle back to the cozy genre because I've heard it, but I don't exactly know what it is. And we might even have to make that its own episode as well. But we'll finish the religion question so we can stay on track and I don't forget.
Okay.
So because we are polytheistic here at the Blasters Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
Well, I'm kind of an old-fashioned gal, so definitely Chronicles.
Okay.
Stayed with me forever, and Game of Thrones and Wheel of Time were too dark for me. I didn't make it through them.
Game of Thrones, I could see. The Wheel of Time, his writing.
I got bored, right?
Yeah, his writing is very much like you can generally tell when you read, like, oh, I know when this was written by the tone, and certain things are just popular at the time. Because I met him briefly, Robert Jordan, when I was in college, and I would not have pinned what he wrote to how he presented himself. He was very sort of fun-loving, laid-back kind of dude. Didn't take anything too seriously, at least when he spoke to the college English department. And so, like, I read that, and it's very much definitely 90s era fiction for the style and the way it's.
Very much so. Very much so. And like I said, I didn't make it through, so I can't comment too much on it. But most of what I read, well, I very much like humor, and I didn't see any humor in either of those, to be honest.
That's fair. If you like space opera, you should check out some of Terry Mixon's stuff. He does the Empire of Bone series, which is really good. We have a long-standing argument about who the real main character is because he thinks it's the princess, and I think it was her brother. And so it's been an ongoing bit, but that series is really good. I think there's like 16 books in that one. And then
what's his last name?
Mixon, Mixon, Terry Mixon. Okay. He's one of my favorite authors, but his last Hunter series is also pretty good. It's got some Battlestar Galactica vibes. They take a museum ship and they bring it back into service. I like the old trope, what's old is new again. Mm-hmm. As a historian by training, like I really dig the idea of bringing back some of those old numbers and giving them a second chance at fate, I guess. So
awesome. I'll look it up.
So the next part of the religion question is one of the crying shames of adulthood is we do stop asking each other the important questions. So thank you to our sponsors. We are going to bring that back and ask you, Maria, what's your favorite dinosaur?
Pterodactyl.
Okay. Was there anything about it that you like particularly?
We have them here in New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
You can be wandering around and you'll be looking and you're like, that looks like a pterodactyl. I thought we had him in Austin because I saw a roach that was so big that I was pretty sure it was a pterodactyl, but it was really just a roach.
That was the one I lived in South Carolina. The running joke was that there were mosquitoes big enough to carry off small babies.
Bingo. Those suckers were huge.
I hear out where you're at, the roaches meet that requirement. They could carry off small babies if you weren't paying attention.
Well, they were in Austin. Like I said, here you see these giant things take off at times. And I'd swear they were pterodactyls. They could be They could be dragons, but you gotta have your binoculars on you to like distinguish.
So I've seen pictures of New Mexico, and all of the images you see, the stunning vistas. So does the terrain where you're at inspire you when you write?
Definitely. I mean, like Underwitch Moon takes place in near Santa Fe, and there's multiple scenes in there where I've actually hiked the areas. So I would say definitely, no matter where I've lived, I've been inspired by what's around me. But New Mexico has some pretty spectacular mountain ranges, and like in Underwitch Moon, one of the hikes that's in there is called Tent Rock. It's a real place, and it is just fascinating. So as you're walking or hiking through it, if you read the book, you can see where my mind was and my imagination.
Yeah. So that would be one to listen to the audiobook as you hike it.
You possibly.
or you might be afraid to move. It's a
beautiful place.
Yeah. Okay. So since we try to be civilized human beings here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, we are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes. Coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
I'm a tea drinker, and I'll take it the English way with cream. I'll take it iced tea like they do in Texas, and I'll pretty much drink it hot right out of the microwave if that's all I have.
Do you drink it with your pinky out like you've got class?
I do, but it depends on the cup I have. But I do actually have China cups, but when I'm drinking tea, I have something that looks like a giant mug. I don't go for the little bitty ones, but
I used to use like the standard like coffee mugs, and I had my favorite. And then somebody introduced me to when I got my AC done, the AC company left one of those metal thermos mugs that you can put like 24 ounces, and I put it in there, and then I forgot about the tea and the coffee. And like 3 hours later, I came like, oh, well, I'm gonna have to reheat this, and I take a sip. I'm like, holy crap, it's so hot. And so I've been a believer in these mugs, these metal ones that everyone on social media was going nuts over. I'm like, I believe now. I believe.
I'm sure I have one of those. I have some old Otagiri mugs that are they must hold 4 cups, and they're a kind of a earthware kind of thing. They're really great for that because I can drink tea all morning.
Yeah, I like the old Stanley ones too, but those are the old style thermoses. They're a little too big for what I want. I need something that's maybe 1 or 2 cups worth. So I definitely feel that one. Although I've seen some of the research that the stoneware stuff's really good at not just keeping it warm, but not messing with the flavor, because sometimes the plastic cups can change the flavor palette of beverages.
I'd say the metal ones are best, or the stoneware is definitely. I agree with you. It keeps them hot, not as well as those metal ones, like you said. Those things, you cover that lid on there, it'll stay the same temperature for 3 hours. I could take it in the car in New Mexico in the heat, and if I have my lid on that, it'll stay ice cold.
Yeah.
So I do use those. They're very good.
So you mentioned that you write a lot of cozy, and I'm not even entirely sure what makes a book a cozy as far as like a category of is it its own genre? Is it a classification as a subgenre?
So cozy started, I would say the queen of cozy is Agatha Christie. And being a TV watcher, you may have seen some of those episodes or heard of her. So she's kind of one of the starts. And I would say that cozy got its start as ordinary mysteries. And they branched with indie publishing. They branched out into subgenres where you have cozy fantasy, you have cozy punk, you have cozy sci-fi. I mean, you name it, you can have that as a subgenre. Legends and Latte, I think, is the name of one that's real popular right now. It was a good book, but I would say there's probably better examples of cozy fantasy out there. So it's kind of a growing thing, especially in fantasy, and it's long overdue. The publishers held tight to what could be published for so long that didn't really allow a lot of subgenres to come into existence. In fact, I think urban fantasy's been around since Mercedes Lackey, but it never took off until the last probably 10 years. And a lot of that's because of indie authors who publish what they want to write. No gatekeepers, so to speak.
Yeah.
In fact, I don't know whether to call her Jana or Jenna Ray. Her Fallen Stone is a great urban fantasy. I hope she continues that series. I wouldn't say she's a cozy writer, though. Cozy typically doesn't have a lot of violence on the page. It never has really bad curse words. It'll more typically have, I don't know if I can say this on the show, but it'll have like shit, damn, and hell, but nothing worse.
Oh, yeah, you're fine. YouTube doesn't.
Okay, good. Things like that. The murders, and there's no graphic descriptions of it. There's definitely murder in cozy mysteries or cozy fantasy, but you're not going to have decapitation described at length in a cozy. It's just going to be glossed over and then on with the mystery or on with the action.
So would Matlock be considered cozy because it kept the details?
Absolutely. And a lot of those old detective, what's that other one? The bumbling detective? I can't think of his name.
Monk? Talking about Monk? The guy
Columbo.
Columbo, yeah, okay.
He's definitely one. And I think another part of cozy that makes it cozy is the humor. There's usually, now some cozies take it really too far and it gets quite silly, but that's like, any writing, there's a broad range. But there's usually quite a bit of, some mocking of characters. You'll see that in a lot of the cozies where they'll take on a kind of a typical thing and be made fun of kind of in the background sort of thing.
Okay. Well, we're definitely going to have to plan an episode, and I will reach back out to you to have you on while we dive into everything cozy.
Sure. Puns, that's another cozy thing.
The puns?
If you look at cozy titles, there's just puns galore in there. One of my favorite authors is T.M. I don't know how to say her last name very well. Baumgartner, I think is how it's said. One of her titles is All Gremlins Great and Small. So it's a play off of a famous book. You'll see that a lot in cozies.
So they like to give homage to the books that came before them?
Kind of. But they're also, sometimes it's kind of a joke. Like they'll take a phrase and they'll turn it into a title, or change one word. So her particular books are actually veterinarian based. So she based that is kind of an homage to All Creatures Great and Small, but she named it All Gremlins Great and Small. It's a great book, great series, and very cozy. Although I think she may have used some bad language in there a couple times.
Okay. I know a lot of the books that were along the lines of like a Clue, the board game, ended up coming out in the cozy genre, but I don't normally read mystery. I'm the fool who reads the back of the mystery book before I finish it because I'm impatient.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll check the back. Like, it doesn't bother me to have mysteries in my sci-fi or fantasy, but if it's specifically a mystery novel, something about that just triggers my brain, and I have to read the end first to see like who did it, and then I go and read it.
Well, that's interesting because in your book, there's quite the mystery going on in the ghost ship as to what's going on. But that wouldn't bother you in sci-fi, but it does in mystery.
It doesn't, for some reason, like the murder mystery type books or some of the Western mysteries like Louis L'Amour wrote. For those, I always read the back first, so I knew who done it. And I don't know, just something about like the police procedural style of mystery books that I got to know that I don't get in other books. I don't know why it is, but I've just always been that way.
So what about fantasy? Do you check the ending to see if they get the bad guy?
No, I mean, I've seen some fantasy mysteries where I probably would, but as a general rule, I like my fantasy more along the lines of like the epic fantasy, the Tolkien-esque vibe.
What about urban fantasy?
I've started reading that. I watched the Supernatural show when I was recovering from a surgery, and I really liked that. And so I've started looking for some of those books to read, and I'm slowly working through. I actually just got with my credit the Legends and Lattes one because other people had mentioned it as well.
That's cozy. That's a cozy one. It's it's not really a mystery.
Right now, my goal has been, I realized how many books I have that I've realized, one, buying books and reading books aren't always the same thing.
No, those are two separate hobbies.
Right. And so I've been trying to get through my backlist, and I found a whole series I owned that I didn't even remember buying.
My husband does that with music. He's got to have this CD
too.
or that CD from some group that nobody's ever heard of, and then he'll go through his stuff and go, oh, I bought that already.
Or you end up, when you find it and you realize you have two of them because you forgot you bought it the first time. I've done that.
He's done that before too. And I can't say I've never done it with books. It's a little bit easier now with ebooks because most sites will tell you if you bought it. But sometimes I've read it at the library and then I end up going,
you get that Deja Vu series. What do you mean? Wait a minute. I know this.
Yep. Well, look into Jamie Gray for urban fantasy, her Transporter series. Really good mix of mysteries and a magical world. So it's got that fantasy element and it's got a thriller element to it. So I think you'd like those.
Okay. I also got a friend of mine, so I'm a little bit biased, but I recently bought, when it was on sale, the Hunters for Hire series, which is urban fantasy by Jonathan Yanez. And it's a guy essentially becomes a werewolf and he hunting, bad guys. But I remember when we auditioned his commercial where he sent us an audio commercial for the podcast and he's like, hey, is this what you're looking for? And I have lost some hearing from my service. So, sometimes for audio, I'll have other people listen to it to make sure they hear what's supposed to be there normally, even if I don't. And I remember my mom was like, oh, I like his voice. Is he single? And I'm like, oh, Mom, I can't listen to this book now. I've got to read it in print.
Yeah, moms can be hazardous to the reading and writing.
They can. Luckily, they didn't care. Like when we went to the library as kids, we were on our own. They were on their own. And when my mom checked out library books, we knew not to interrupt her for the next day or two. And those were the days you knew you were fending for yourself in the kitchen. You better hope there were leftovers.
Yep. Or that you knew how to make a decent tuna fish sandwich.
Absolutely. Actually, tuna fish sandwiches was one of my go-tos, that and peanut butter and jelly. Although my sister, it was always peanut butter and banana. And my brother, it was always peanut butter and honey. And I haven't tried those two yet because I think both of them are weird. So maybe I'll go back and give those a visit because I read a book where he was eating peanut butter and banana. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe it's not so weird after all.
That sounds like a cozy thing. You get a lot of recipes and a lot of foodies type things in cozies. I wrote One Good Eclair, and that's got a lot of food references. So, and that's not unusual in cozies at all.
I'm not easily offended. Growing up a military brat in the era when I did with like Beavis and Butthead was our famous, cartoon enjoyment, like Blazing Saddles, like just the era of the 80s and 90s was so irreverent. If you were easily offended, you didn't live. And so, yeah, I was going somewhere with that. Crap, my mind went blank. That's the brain damage for me right there.
It was probably really important too.
It was, I'm sure. It was total genius. So I don't really need trigger warnings. That doesn't really bother me. I'm not easily offended. I don't mind that people put them in. I understand why they do. But for me, what I need a food warning because I've been dieting. I've lost 80 pounds already. I got more to lose. My goal is to fit back into my dress blues so I can go visit a friend of mine in Arlington with a full beard in my dress blues because he was always nitpicking my facial hair. So I got to lose another 100 pounds. But some authors, like, I need a food warning. Like, if you're going to be bad for my diet, you need to warn me in advance. Because, like, I don't know if you've read any of Melissa McShane's lit RPG stuff. She has the War Master series, which I really dig. It's cool as it's not something I couldn't let my kids read. So I could read it with the kids. Because sometimes some of what I enjoy is just not family friendly. But I can't read her books when I'm hungry because she's going to make me ruin my diet because she's always describing food.
Yeah, I have read some of her books, not those in particular, but I love her writing, especially the one with the sentient bookstore. I love that series.
Oh, yeah, that sounds awesome.
The name of it, but that was awesome. But yeah, I mean, if a book's title is One Good Eclair, that's probably it. I think there's a hint there that you might not want to read that when you're hungry.
Yeah, and there's one, Katie Cross was telling me about one about a kitchen witch, and I'm like, well, if I already know a kitchen is involved, I can't read that till I hit my goal weight.
Well, that's not necessarily true. It could be, but like I told you at the beginning of this that I'm a chaos witch. Well,
Right.
there's actually a whole category of witches called hearth witches or kitchen witches. They're known more as kitchen witches in the US and a hearth witch in the UK. And it actually has to do with the type of magic, more so than the food. Although with the way genres get stretched, it could be both or either one of those. But a kitchen witch is actually just a reference to a type of cozy magic usually.
Oh, okay.
But again, I don't know that series, so it might make you hungry too, because it might have recipes.
Who knows? But like I said, I just need the food warning if this is going to be bad for my diet, because some authors are just really good at describing the food stuff.
Yeah, well, like I said, a hearth witch or kitchen witch, you're probably going to get quite a bit of herbal type things, not necessarily edible recipes, but salves, recipes that go wrong, or herbal mixtures that can cause hives. I mean, there's a whole bunch of magical lore that goes into kitchen witch.
Okay. I'll have to check it out. I'll bug her until she tells me the name of the authors.
Sure.
Give it a shot. I've been expanding my horizons. The other thing I've been doing reading wise is reading a lot of the classics, because we stand on the shoulders of the giants that came before us. So some of the stuff like the Asimov that I never got around to, I've been working my way through those. Some of the Heinlein stuff, some of just the OGs of the sci-fi world, and then I've revisited Tad Williams. Green Rider stuff is really good. I read his stuff when I was a kid, and everyone keeps talking about there's more elf or Shannara books. And when I was in high school, I kind of stopped reading because it wasn't that I wasn't reading. Everything I was reading was for school at that point, because you're in all the honors classes. And so I didn't realize more of the Shannara books came out. And now I found out there's more. I'm like, I'm going to have to buy them all again and start from the beginning.
It's interesting because when I've gone back and read some of the books that I used to read when I was growing up, including things like Chronicles of Narnia, it always interests me what holds up and what doesn't. It's like listening to music where you go back and listen to some of your what used to be, oh my gosh, I know that song, I listened to, and then you listen to it and you go, that doesn't hold up. Yeah. I've changed, or the world has changed, or you're looking for something different. So it'd be very interesting to know how well those hold up.
I'll have to give it. I know for a period of my life, I was always checking the ground for blue pebbles, because the elf stones. Never found them. There's a funny, if you're listening, if you want to check it out, dear listeners, a funny TED Talk by Terry Brooks where his mother was criticizing that he was so interested in books that he never went outside, and it wasn't healthy. The boy needed to play outside. So he got on his bicycle with his little friends, and they got the lids for the 55-gallon trash cans, those big metal monstrosities that were like silver. Those were their shields. Broom handles were their lances, and they went jousting on their bikes. And the mom saw that, and she's like, you know what? Why don't you go read a book?
Might be safer.
And I'm like, all I could think of is, dang, why didn't I think of that? Because I totally would have done that as a young boy.
Yep. You didn't have the right space to do that on your bike. That's probably the only reason you didn't think of it.
Yeah, and by the time I was little, there's the big metal trash cans that made the perfect lid shield combo were just not as popular. It was more about the more compact plastic ones that were easier on the back. I
still have one of those metal lid cans. If you need to borrow it.
We might have to arrange a trade of some sort.
There you go.
We'll call it bonding with the boys on all the things that I wanted to do as a kid and never got around to.
And didn't have a chance to.
Okay. Well, we've been going at it. So before we play the commercial, so obviously, you love reading, you grew up reading. We've sort of hinted at that. When did you decide that you wanted to transition from like consuming the content, reading the stories, to telling your own? How did that happen for you?
So I started writing plays when I was in high school. Okay. And I wouldn't say that I knew at the time what I was doing. It was just that we had to put on a play and we didn't know what play to put on. And so I ended up writing one. And then the next year I wrote the next one when we needed it. We were actually entering these plays in a contest at state level to see who would go to Washington, D.C. to put the plays on. And it was part of a history class that I was in. And when I moved back to New Mexico to help take care of my parents about 6 years ago, I actually found one of the plays in my mom's closet in a box. I barely remember doing it, and then I was like, oh yeah, I remember. So apparently it was pretty young. I think I was in 10th grade when I wrote the first play. I didn't really start writing more seriously till I think what did it is I was working for a living, and talk about a killer, that'll suck all the life out of you. So of course I read to escape, and that's when I started seriously writing for the same reason. I wanted to be in a different place than I was in. And I think all of us writers have people in our life that we can put on the page and make them suffer.
Yeah, we've all got that.
So there was some of that, in my early writing, not necessarily that some of that early writing didn't necessarily get published, but I probably took up seriously writing about 5 years after I started working out of college,
Yeah, I was in high school and I tried to write an epic poem because I'd read Gilgamesh and Beowulf, and I'm like, I could do this. It was horrific. I'm hopeful that my English teacher burned all copies. Probably.
It's your mom you got to worry about.
I don't think she has a copy. I might have.
It's in the closet in a box somewhere.
Yeah, that worries me because it was bad. Like I definitely thought a lot more of my abilities at the time than I probably warranted. But, anyone who thinks they're going to write an epic poem in the 10th grade probably has a little bit of an ego.
I didn't write poetry, although I wrote like birthday cards and birthday message cards. There was an artist that lived nearby me in New Mexico. She was a friend of my parents, and she made cards. She was an artist, and she did watercolor with, I believe it was watercolor pencil, but my memory may not have that right. And she would produce these just gorgeous cards. And so I would write little messages for her to put in the cards. But I never did I wouldn't call it poetry. No. and I might not like any of them if I found them today either.
Yeah, for me, it was more like the style of an epic poem is not what most people would consider poetry either. Like you said, it was just because I liked those stories so much, and I'm like, that sounds kind of cool. Let me try that more than anything. And it was a requirement that I write something. So I mean, it was for a school.
There you go. There you go.
But yeah, I did like those old adventure stories that that was the era with the Hardy Boys and the Boxcar Kids and.
See, and the Boxcar Kids, those are kind of have that cozy.
Really?
A lot, yeah. Some of those style things. I mean, those are obviously young adult or even younger than that. But yeah. Cozies can have a lot of that same feel to them, just with adult characters.
So would Scooby-Doo then be a cozy?
Absolutely mystery? A cozy. I mean, you can have the genres, whether it's a comic book or it's a movie.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're all out there. And I would say if you've seen a rom-com movie, that's what cozy is probably closest to.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to pause for a moment while we shamelessly shill for the man, and then we will come back and we'll talk about the books that brought us here.
Excellent.
Humanity's last hope is a combat sports champion. In the wake of humanity's great expansion across the stars, war was a thing of the past, and its armies and navies were disbanded. Disputes were settled by the ancient practice of trial by combat in the Gladius Leagues, where elite athletes, clad in advanced powered armor, fought in front of millions. Their motto was, "We fight, so others don't have to." Nick Warhorse Landry, Star Field Commander of the Foundry Warhawks, was content to live by that code until everything changed. His home planet fell under a terrifying alien invasion while he was light years away. But when the invasion reaches his current system, humanity has a defense. Unfortunately, that defense is Warhorse and his team of prima donna athletes. They're stars of the arena, but they're woefully unprepared for real war. With the guidance of the last surviving general from the expansion wars, these sports heroes are thrust into a battle for survival and they'll have to learn fast, or humanity faces total extinction. Will Warhorse and his crew rise to the occasion or fall in the final battle for humanity's future? If you love high-octane military sci-fi, packed with powered armor, explosive action, and a touch of NFL swagger mixed with WWE bravado, Any Given Doomsday is an action-packed adventure you won't want to miss. Available now from Chris Kennedy Publishing at Amazon.com.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude, dear listener, dear viewer at home. But now let's get to the series that brought us here. So we have the Moon Shadow Sidekicks novel, which is both a mouthful and an intriguing title. So where did you get the premise for this series?
Wow. I wrote Under Which Moon, which is the first book, not in the Sidekick series, but the original series. It's been over 10 years ago that I wrote Under Which Moon. I have to say that I probably got my inspiration from New Mexico, because there are a lot of New Mexico hikes in there. And I do use a lot of New Mexico American Indian myths and lore in there. I call myself a chaos witch because I think I started out as a kitchen witch, which we talked about, but I met Coyote Trickster. And so that kind of put a little bit of a spin on witchery. In Under Which Moon, Adriel is an earth witch, but she deals with a lot of American Indian. In fact, the love interest in the series is American Indian. And I don't know if you're familiar with American Indian lore, but shape-shifting is actually a part of their lore. There's a lot of American Indian dances where they wear the cape of like Coyote Trickster or a buffalo hide. And there's this belief that they can take on the personality or the attributes of the animal that they're respecting or dancing to. So some of that type of thing shows up in there. The reason I wrote the Sidekick series, which starts with Which Way, and then there's No Witch, it actually came about because people kept asking me about some of the side characters in Under Which Moon, especially Ghost Shadow.
That's my favorite cover of the three.
Pardon?
That's my favorite cover of the three.
Oh, good. I just redid that cover. I had a different, darker kind of cover on there. And someone finally said, you have the Grim Reaper on your cover and that really doesn't fit your writing. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I always liked the Grim Reaper, but okay. And this actually captures the book quite a bit better. It has that shapeshifter thing going for it. And it also captures the Native American theme that's kind of throughout the whole series.
Yeah, I like all three of them. So this started as a way to essentially tell the side stories set in the main universe.
Right.
So
the side characters, Lynx in particular, was very popular character. So I had a lot of requests saying, hey, I want to learn more about Lynx. I want to learn more about Lynx. Lynx is obviously a human lynx shifter. And in Under Which Moon, he is quite young and he grows older as the books go along, Under Which Aura and Under Which Curse. And so by the time I got to writing the Sidekick series, where you also see some of the main characters show up in there, Lynx needed his own novel.
So to read the Moon Shadow series books, do you need to have read the main series, or do each of these stand alone as well?
The Sidekick series stands completely on its own. They're actually written to be a little bit more independent than Under Which Moon, Under Which Aura, Under Which Curse are all about the same main characters, and they follow their growth. So that's a series kind of off by itself, but then there was a few side characters that I really wanted to explore and some side magic attributes that I wanted to explore. And that's where Which Way started. And it went from there, where it dealt with individual characters that I wanted, or individual aspects of the world that I wanted to learn more about.
So when you base the magic, are you using what most people, would consider witchcraft from like the European standard, or are you mixing that with the mysticism that is sometimes common with more native religious systems?
Ooh, I'd have to say more Native American religious mix than the European. I mean, there's no Harry Potter here with a wand.
Right.
I think, like I said, Adriel is an earth witch. So there's a lot of dependence on mixing spells, but also the properties of metal, the properties of gems that can provide the basis for a powerful spell. But there's other witches in the stories. That there's a water witch, for example. One of her best friends is a water witch, and her power is essentially derived from water, which is an earth element as well. The love interest in Underwitch Moon uses wind. So there's a lot of the more Native American kind of connection there with the elements. And obviously Coyote Trickster has a few very important scenes, as does Granny Spider, who's a weaver. She's in both the Sidekick and in the Underwitch Moon series. So you get a little bit of everything thrown in there.
Now, given you're using New Mexico tribes, that's what, the Pueblo, the Apache, and the Navajo. Did you pull from any one specific, or did you kind of mix and match to make the story intriguing?
It's kind of interesting. I do look up legends and myths to see how close I am to actual stories. But I grew up here, so in my own way, these are kind of stories that I grew up with. I mean, when I grew up here in New Mexico, there was still at least one or two individuals that were traveling with a teepee along the river here seasonally. So a lot of the pottery, a lot of the ways of life were still kind of talked about when I was growing up. So, Coyote Trickster was kind of a big part of the area. So that worked its way into the books before I did the research, or before I even cared whether it was Apache or Navajo. And there's a lot of mixing, I think it's safe to say. Father Sky, Mother Earth, those they may call them slightly different, but the Pueblo Indians are thought in some ways to be an offshoot of Navajo, whereas the Apache are not. But where I happen to have grown up, the Apache tribes were much more common than either of the other two. And I would say my lore probably follows Navajo and Pueblo lore more closely.
Okay. So for people listening that have young kids that potentially read, what would you give as if we use the movie scale rating, because that's what everyone's familiar with, how would you rate these books?
I don't watch movies. What's the movie scale rating?
Like the PG 13.
PG.
Okay. So are these romance novels, mystery novels? We know you mentioned they were cozy, but like, what genre would you place them in? It almost sounds like romance.
So these are Underwitch Moon and Nullwitch are probably my least cozy.
Okay.
I would say that Underwitch Moon is probably urban fantasy. The romance is pretty secondary, and it takes 3 books to really come to a conclusion. In Which Way is more of a teaser to see if there was interest in other characters in that world. So it's kind of a mix of the old characters and throwing in Spring, who is the star of Nullwitch. She is a Nullwitch. So that was kind of interesting exploration of, you've got Adriel, who's this powerful earth witch by the third book. And then you bring Spring into the picture, and she has this bad habit of sucking up all magic and kind of negating it. So there's, you get to see it from both sides depending on which book you're reading.
So,
but there is romance. There's almost always a subgenre of romance or romantic threads in almost all my books.
Is the fact that she's a null witch the reason you have the main character and the animal as a void, just black outline?
It is. It really is. But it's not. It's also because when you stand on a mountain in New Mexico and you're either looking into the sunset or the sunrise, things are in shadow. So that picture for me it really depicted New Mexico quite well.
Okay. So with the series, so each of the Moon Shadow Sidekick novels, each of those stand alone, or do those follow an arc that are contiguous from 1 to 2 to 3?
Those stand alone. The first one, like I said, it's more of a novella. It's kind of a teaser entry level. I had it on my blog as a free story for quite a while to see how it did. But Null Witch stands by itself. If you buy the paperback, you get both Witch Way and Null Witch as one volume, because Witch Way is too short to have a print version of it. And then Ghost Shadow is definitely standalone. And you could read that right after, if you finished Under Witch Moon and that whole series, you could read that one at the end and it would fit fine there too. Because it literally is Lynx's story after he's kind of come into his own.
That cover is the kind of thing you take out all the text and just hang it as a print on a wall. It just looks that nice. I really like it.
I love that kind of art, which obviously
me too.
I'm attracted to, or I wouldn't have used it as a cover.
And I, the dream catchers are, you build a lot of them in the scouting back in the day too, because a lot of scouting was influenced obviously by native heritage as well. So, I'm familiar with them. So each of these stories stands alone. Do the main characters from the main series play in each of these novels, or is it just a shared universe as the tie?
No, they're Adriel and Whitefeather. They appear in every one of the books. They are the main characters that I started with in Under Witch Moon, and they're more of the side characters in the Sidekick novels, but they still play important parts in them. And the dream catchers that you mentioned are key to solving a couple of the magical problems in more than one of the novels.
So from a timeline perspective, it sounds like Null Witch and Under Witch Moon happen at the same time as each other.
No. The sidekicks are definitely after. If you really wanted to start and get all the history, you would read Under Witch Moon. It's just that because the characters play lesser roles in Null Witch, you wouldn't have to read them. Okay.
So they are, from a chronological standpoint, if you're reading them in chronology, you'd start with the main series and then read this one.
Yes.
Right now, there are obviously 3 books. Are there going to be more in this series, or is it done as a trilogy?
I think they're both done as trilogies. I was pretty happy with where I left Adriel and Whitefeather at the end of Under Witch Curse, which is partly why I wanted to explore other characters. But I wouldn't say never, because the world is I love the world that I created there. So I could see another book after Ghost Shadow with some more different characters. Matilda didn't get all of her story told. You never know what that water witch will get up to. So she might show up again someday.
Now, do you have to be intimately familiar with the various types of magic to understand, or do you kind of explain what the difference between a water witch and a null witch and a earth witch and all of that? Like, is that covered in the story for those that aren't intimately familiar?
I think it's covered in the story. That's one of the things that the advantage of having my husband as an editor. He never read fantasy for, he had to read certain books in school, like we were talking about, but he was not a fantasy reader. So, he'll come, I think when he was reading probably Under Witch Moon, he said, "What the hell is a grimoire?" There's just, and he's like, this whole werewolf thing is kind of weird, he's a Monty Python fan, so he's familiar with weird and wonderful, but there was a lot of new terminology for him and magical rules for him to pick up on. And if there was something that I took for granted that everybody knew, he made sure and let me know.
Okay, that is good to know. Hopefully his mother was not a hamster and nobody smelled that.
No.
The Monty Python is classic stuff right there. 'Tis but a scratch. 'Tis but a flesh.
I had a feeling you might be a Monty Python fan. It just seemed like you might be.
Because I know we have some youngins listening. I won't say it, but the Roman segments that are very tongue-in-cheek body humor, we shall say, are some of the most hilarious scenes I've ever read. I don't know how those actors did that movie with a straight face. I don't know that I could.
They probably had to do more than one take, because
probably. So these are obviously print and ebook. Are there any plans to bring these to audiobook? If they're out there, did I miss them?
Well, I did do audio, but it's Google AI, so you can only find the audio on Google Play and Kobo Books. The plan there was to do them with Google's AI voice, which is actually fairly decent. I like it better than Amazon's voice. And if they earned enough money to get a real voice actor. I think I'm going to have to redo that plan, because I don't think the audience is all that keen on AI voicing for various reasons. One of which is I don't think people are comfortable with AI and how it's being used and touted. So there isn't any real person audio at this point.
Okay. I'm definitely sympathetic. So my grandfather worked with the deaf and the blind, so some of those alternatives. And as my hearing was deteriorated from my time overseas, I do most of my reading through my ear, so I can appreciate, having that out there, because reading in print is sometimes difficult with the head injury. So I'm a little more sympathetic to the AI route. I prefer humans just because I like supporting other artists. But I have been known to listen to some of the robot stuff. It's gotten a lot better, but you can tell when with the intonation, whether it's AI or not sometimes.
Yeah, and I didn't, one of the reasons I actually used it had nothing to do with publishing in AI. It is a great way to proofread my own books.
Absolutely. I use it for that too.
Yeah, so that's why I originally started doing Google Play AI, and I was actually impressed with how good it's not going to fool anybody, but their intonation is actually better than I could have believed possible. And it's better than, like I said, I did some beta with Amazon, and I think Google's ahead of them when it comes to making it sound human.
Okay. So if you do have to have it in audio, we will link to her author page, in which case from there, she does list with all of her books where you can get them outside of the Amazon ecosystem. So if that is something you are willing to try, is that if they use Google, do they have to have a separate, because I listen to mine when I go on my walk. So I have the Audible app, the Book Funnel, Downpour, I think is another one. I have those all apps. Does the Google app, is there a Google app that lets you listen to the audiobooks, or do you have to download something?
No, there's a Google app, and there's also a Kobo app.
Okay.
So like Kobo, I don't know how familiar you are outside of Amazon, but Kobo has all the ebooks, and they sell a lot of audio. So they also sell their own e-reader, and you can listen to it through your e-reader if you are in that ecosystem, or you can download an app and you can listen to it on your phone, which is probably what you do with Audible.
Yeah, there's an app, and then of course Spotify, you can get books there too. So
Yeah, and Google Play does have the same sort of thing. They have an app, and you listen on your phone.
My favorite of all the alternative apps is BookFunnel, just because it's idiot proof.
Yes, it is. It's a good place to get some. Lot of authors offer free books up there.
Well, that, and it's because it's an easy way to create an interface on your website if you want to sell direct.
Yes.
And if you're willing, that is the best way to buy an author's book, is to buy it direct, because they get more of the profit that way. So if you want to make a difference to the authors you like and providing patronage, buying direct where possible will definitely help you out.
I do have a bookstore off my Bear Mountain Books page, and it's just part of my Bear Mountain Books page. There's a little store there, and I do sell most of my books direct.
So where did the Bear Mountain come from for your publishing house?
So that goes back to Native American art. I don't know if you've heard of the medicine bear, but if you check out my blog or website page, you'll see there is a medicine bear as my logo. And I drew that myself, which was
cool.
Took me quite some time, because I'm not really an artist. And that was something that was, like I said, I grew up with that kind of symbol around me all of the time, and it kind of became my own special symbol. So then when it came time to do my website and my publishing name, I picked Bear Mountain Books based on the medicine bear.
I like it. And I get it. Like, that's the one thing, because I wasn't, one of the first in for the indie publishing, they say, hey, don't name your publishing house after yourself. Give it a name. And we had already incorporated as J.R. Handley Incorporated, but we made an imprint name because of that. So I dig the idea that it's personal to you.
Yeah, it is.
So is there any Bear Mountain merch?
Off and on, I've done different stuff, but it's usually kind of a seasonal thing where when I have a new book come out, I'll maybe do some book bags that have that sort of thing on them. Right now, I don't run anything year round with it. Usually it'll be a new book comes out, and that's when you would look for anything that I come up with that I'm going to do for marketing.
Okay, that makes sense. Is there anything about the Moon Shadow Sidekicks series that we didn't cover that you think listeners need to know about?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Probably not. I think they've got all the ammo they need.
So just so you know, we have a side chat through Facebook, because that's where it's just easy to book that way, because it's in real time. So if you're trying to pin people down on a schedule, it's primo. It's right up there with texting as far as real time communication. For our frequent guests, it's called the Shenanigans Group. And so I mentioned when we were doing the pre-show, was there any interest in a cozy panel? And they blew it. Like, I'm just looking at like 44 messages I'm going to have to read through. So apparently there's an interest in that panel, and it's all your fault.
Hey, it's a big and a growing genre, and a very popular genre right now. Like I said, there's a lot of pieces to it.
And I think with the world having spouts of darkness, with just modern politics writ large and from a global perspective, I think the feel-good stuff is on the ascendancy right now.
Absolutely.
People are like, well, if I wanted to read the dark stuff, I'd just read a newspaper.
No kidding. Get on the internet, on any of the social media.
Right, it doesn't matter, what your political affiliation, both sides are doing it. So I do think something like a cozy, something that kind of doesn't leave you with a bitter taste in your mouth, those books are doing really well right now.
Yeah, they are.
So it's a good thing. I'm going to have to explore some more on the cozies. We'll definitely adding you to the list of potential guests for that one.
Wonderful.
So obviously we mentioned it's your publishing company is Bear Mountain Publishing. And that's your website. We'll link it in the show notes. Is there anywhere else where you hang out, if listeners and readers wanted to check you out?
I'm mostly on Blue Sky, and I'm on Blue Sky under my name and Bear Mountain Books. It's kind of you can probably find me by putting in either on the search. So those are my two favorite places to hang out, is my blog or over on Blue Sky.
I'm like we said in the pre-show, I'm surprised Blue Sky lasted. I thought it was going to be one of those flash in the pan ones. There were a few others that didn't make the cut, that came and went, including an attempt to revitalize MySpace. But I guess Tom wasn't there, and so it just didn't work, because Tom was our first friend.
Oh, well, yeah, I kind of vaguely remember it, but I was never, I mean, I think I saw it a few times and went, this has got a lot of ads on it.
It does, but it was a lot of indie bands back in the day, and I've always enjoyed music. So a lot of indie bands would have like free websites because you could get the player interface where they could upload their music and you could just jam out. And they're of course getting ad revenue for you staying on their site, so they would loot their stuff. And if you like music, it was a place to be back in the day.
I see. Yeah, Blue Sky has a lot of artists. I follow a lot of artists there. Not much music yet, but I am a big fan of music. So I'm hoping some of my favorites. I'm hoping Ashley McBride shows up there someday. Mark Knopfler. We can always use music in our life.
Absolutely. So with that, this is the part, dear listener, where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right book. So do your part. And since she sells wide, if you buy it from Barnes & Noble or Kobo or any of those places, leave reviews there too. Amazon is not the only place to review a book. And if you really want to be nice, go over to GoodReads, start your own website and do book reviews there. And we'll highlight you out here because, who doesn't love a good book review?
Absolutely.
And so there's always cool formattings. And I that's one of those things when you're talking about a book review is finding the right format that works for you is key. I actually stole my formatting template when I was doing it before I wrote for Upstream for my reviews, that I did it for my own website, from an English teacher who at one point in time, and I can't remember her name and I feel bad about that, but she had a website and I stole hers and just made it military themed. I asked permission, and so I keep those alive on the website, even though in theory I could pull them down and re-upload them elsewhere, because she passed away. And so I'm like, you know what? We'll keep the spirit of her book reviews alive.
Awesome.
It's cool. I do like to credit the sources. So you can find us, dear listener, on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters, the Spotify, where you can also buy books. I forgot about that one earlier. Discord, we've got our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page. We have our email for professional purposes only people, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Save the shenanigans from Madam Stabby Stab over there on the Instagram, Twitters, and the emails. You can support the show by going to buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it's for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that coffee brand coffee till they float away on a river of Java goodness. Speaking of coffee brand coffee, link is in the show notes. Use the code podcast grunts. You get 10% off. We get a little bit of a kickback. It's a win-win. Even better, they're actually roasted in the United States, employing locals, which is important. This is not a drop shipping operation. They roast them themselves, and they're pretty good. And if shipping is an issue, if you live overseas, for instance, you can buy their coffee on Amazon as well. Go there. We get no kickbacks. Just when you leave a review, say the Blasters and Blades sent you, and maybe then they'll send us free coffee too, because I would be happy to get paid in product. I'm just saying. And with that, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Thank you for coming on, Maria. This was a lot of fun, and we're definitely going to have you back for that cozy panel.
Awesome. Look forward to it.
All right. With that, we're going to hit the end button. Wait for it.